Welcome back to the channel, my friends. Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man, and today we're taking a look at a little old meets new. This video is sponsored by CMO Games. More on that later. So I was glancing over the Warhammer community articles today. Nothing was like crazy jumping out at me, and this one kind of caught my eye. So I understand there was a lot of hype for Old World initially, and some of that hype has already faded. But there was some cool stuff that they were kind of talking about in this article, so I thought we'd go through it together. And even if you're not interested in Old World, which I'm really not, it was cool to hear them talking a little bit about like some of the old molds and the process and all that good stuff. So let's take a look. Old World Almanac, the art of remastering classic miniatures. The Old World project is bringing back hundreds of classic models from a rich history of Warhammer. The Warhammer studio have been lovingly recovering and rediscovering old molds and machining tools, and returning them to production so they may once again do valiant battle on the most oblong of bases. But while we remember each and every one of the wonderful miniatures from yesteryear with all-consuming fondness, we can't claim in good conscience that they were all smooth experiences to build. Fortunately, the team bringing Warhammer the Old World to your tabletop had this in mind when they were pillaging the archives. And more than a few of the larger returning models have been remastered to update their details and ensure they fit together as painlessly as possible. Here's Rob, the guy in charge of the whole Old World project, to explain. So I only made it about this far, but this kind of caught my interest because I was curious exactly how they were like pulling up all these old molds and if the quality was still going to be good and what all they had to do to basically recast like 30-year-old models. In some cases, the original greens are long missing. The factory keeps the cast masters, however, which are sometimes in metal and sometimes resin. There's slight loss of detail when transferring to the master cast from the original green. So we had Lewis painstakingly hand sculpt these details back into the models. Okay, so interesting. I was curious exactly how that works. So they basically have to like re-sculpt some of the lost detail. Very cool. This thing is loaded with detail. This also meant cutting them up slightly different, as the manufacturing process for resin is different than metal. He resculpted every rivet on the Bretonian trebuchet, the eye socket on every skull, and sharpened all manner of other details, and even added some additional work. For example, there is now an inside to the Casket of Souls. He has had a lot of fun looking at these kits and working out what best to do. Okay, very cool. So there's like actually an inside in here now, so that's like new detail added in. I mean, some of this stuff actually holds up like pretty nicely. I don't know if this is specifically like the remaster, but this looks good. He also adjusts the joints of the Tomb Scorpion to make it easier to assemble and more posable. It's now all ball joints. He created a new third variant for the carrion based on Trish's original 2. This allowed us to put them in a pack of 3, which we think better serves how people will want to use them in their games. We also obviously took the opportunity to add unreleased head to the Bone Giant kit, as we all thought it was very cool. Okay, so the Scorpion's pretty cool, definitely holds up. I mean, you can see this definitely has like the old school kind of style to it and everything, but still a cool looking model. Not sure which one of these is the new one, but they definitely all have like the same kind of like look and feel to them. I'm guessing this one is like a little bit different, so that's probably the newer one. So very, very cool. Definitely a fan. And then I think this is the new head on the Bone Giant right here. So like I said, it seems like the actual like troops and like the masses have gotten like a lot less detail, a lot less attention. But like the other kits actually hold up pretty nicely. Here we can see like the 2 different Bone Giant heads. So while Warhammer the Old World is mostly supported by a vast range of classic models, the entire team has poured enormous care and attention into getting their best ever versions out onto the tabletop. There will also be a smattering of remastered models coming to other core armies once each range gets its release. And there are loads of surprises returning on a made-to-order basis. Don't forget to check back on Saturday for something. Okay, so a little vague there at the end, but very cool. Now, I'm not sure if they have actually like specified what they're doing for like the other launches. I feel like I've heard at least some rumors that they're going to do basically like a Bretonian / Tomb King style box for like the other factions as they roll them out, which I think is a great idea. Selling like a big single faction army box with or without the rulebook. I could totally see after the initial launch and the boxes that already came out, them doing the future boxes without the rulebook, because I would imagine a lot of the same customers are buying like more than one of these boxes as they're coming out. So probably not going to keep needing the rulebook. It also puts the box at like a little bit of a higher price point, which is much less appealing to people. Like I think they could do basically around like $200 boxes if they don't have that big rulebook in them. So that would definitely be ideal. Now a quick message from today's sponsor. CMO Games has been selling Games Workshop products online for over 20 years. They carry the full line of Games Workshop products, including Warhammer 40,000, Age of Sigmar, Necromunda, Blood Bowl, paint tools, and more. Almost all Games Workshop products are priced at 15% off MSRP. CMO Games takes pre-orders for most Games Workshop products released at their earliest date possible. 12:01 a.m. on Saturday, they go live. Most of these pre-order products are also priced at 15% off MSRP. CMO Games offer free shipping in the US 48 with an order of $50 or more. Their customer service is top-notch and they ship most orders within 24 hours. Visit CMOgames.com using the affiliate link in the description and let them know that you heard about CMO Games from Warhammer Man. Now back to the video. I'm also really curious too, like I wish they would actually say what stops them from making a new model like this in plastic versus resin. I would imagine that it strictly comes down to like how many of them they need to sell to pay for the kit and to make a profit. But like, what are the actual numbers? Like, I'm legitimately curious because there's definitely a opportunity cost to them making a kit in resin versus plastic. Like if they were going to sell, let's say 1,000 of them, if they make it in resin, if they make the same kit in plastic, they probably sell like 2,000. And I'm not sure how they like account for that or like what the math is on that. Because for instance, this kit right here, Elise Duchard, and it's basically like the remastery of the old Bretonnian sorceress. It's like the Lady of the Lake, I think, on the unicorn. Like I will not buy any of this model because it's in resin, but I absolutely love it. If it was in plastic, I would probably buy multiples of it. And I would definitely make this work for like various conversions in various different armies. But because it's in resin, I'm not going to buy any of them. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people that think the same way that would buy at least one if it was plastic, but will buy none because it's in resin or metal. And like, that's just really curious because I wonder how they like account for that. Because this model is absolutely beautiful. I know there's tons and tons of people out there that would literally just buy this model to paint up. Me personally, I would love to paint this model, but I just have no interest in resin. And I think if this model was in plastic, especially because there's no like cool plastic unicorns that are sold by Games Workshop, this would be a prime candidate for use for like conversions for like tons of different armies. Like for instance, right off the bat, I could totally see this model either straight up as is or likely with like minor conversions being used for Lord Solar Leontis. But like I said, because it's resin, I'm just not even a mess with it. I would absolutely love to have this model in plastic as my Lord Solar Leontis. But resin, it's just not worth messing around with. And to tell you the truth, even thinking about it in resin and imagining just like a little bit of base like putty work or like some bits attached to this, it would actually be awesome for Lord Solar Leontis. And it's almost worth pulling the trigger on. But like I said, if it was plastic, I would probably pick up a few of these. Use them for various painting projects, conversions. I'm sure other people would be excited and wanting them for commissions. So very interesting. I wish when Games Workshop would talk about like that article that we saw today, a little bit about like what makes them pull the trigger on something being resin versus being plastic and what the difference in numbers would have to be. Because I'm legitimately curious. I know they've talked about in the past like what it costs to make like a plastic mold. But I'm curious, like, what is the difference between making a resin cast mold versus a plastic mold? Because if it's just a few $1,000s, even if it's like $10,000, I can't imagine that making this model specifically, this one that has nothing like it in the entire Games Workshop range, an absolutely beautifully sculpted model, an amazing remastery of a classic, not worth them pulling the trigger on to make in plastic. Because something like the Lord of Decay, the remastery of like that old model back into plastic, absolutely amazing. Something like the Green Knight, if they remastered that and brought it back in plastic, absolutely amazing. And I think this easily falls in that same category. Not to mention this one is very, very unique as well. So I can't imagine there's not somebody behind the scenes saying like, hey, we should make this one in plastic too. Because like super cool, like the new plastic Pegasus, like Bretonnian Lord and everything. Awesome model. It's great for sure. But like, what about this? So I'm honestly curious if anybody has like any experience with that, any ex-Games Workshop employees know anything about like the numbers or anything like that, or if you just have experience in the field. How big is the gap between making something in a resin versus making it in plastic? How many more of this model would they have to sell as a plastic model to make it worth actually doing? Because if it's a few thousand, I could totally see it. If it's 10,000, maybe not. If it's 100,000, definitely not. But very interesting. So anyway, just saw that article earlier, made me think about it. And this model has specifically been on my mind because it's just so awesome since the first time I've seen it. And if there was going to be a resin model that I would pick up and paint or potentially convert, I think this would definitely be it. So let me know down below if you got any answers to those questions. Always appreciate you guys chiming in the comments. Special thanks to CMO Games for sponsoring the video. Check out the link in the description to save 15% on Games Workshop products. That's it for today. Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man, and I'm out of here.